Welcome back to Learn Your Stripes. I'm Ryan Guillory.
And I'm Michael Moran, and we'll start tonight with the result of the play from our previous episode. Now, it has been a little while, so we'll reread it, and we had to make a slight modification because it did come into play into the penalty enforcement. So we have 4th and 5 from the B35. A12 hands off to A23, who runs to the B31 and fumbles. The ball bounces at the B28, where A89 recovers and advances for an apparent touchdown. While A89 was at the A10 or at the B10 rather, he begins to high step with no defenders near him. The headline judge has a flag for UNS. After all of this, the umpire goes to the referee after the play and says he has a foul for a low block on A85 at the B32 while the ball was loose. And that B32 part we had to add because in our previous question we left out an enforcement spot for the penalty. So we added it in there. So we'll give you a few seconds to think it over. And now we'll answer it. So in high school, the score is nullified. The low block is enforced as a live ball foul, and the UNS is going to be enforced as a dead ball foul. Now, in high school, the UNS is still enforced as a dead ball foul, but we have the live ball low block that's going to come into play as well. So we'll end up with 4th and 32 from the A38. Now, how did we get there? We have the low block foul, 15 yards back, and then another 15 yards for the dead ball UNS. And again, we'll have the clock start on the snap with a 25-second play clock. Now, in college, there's something else to consider. With it being 4th down, the ball is dead when A89 recovers it because he's not the fumbler. So we'll bring that ball back to the B31 because the recovery spot is in advance of the fumble. And that spot, the B31, is short of the line to gain. So in this case, B will likely decline the low block by A55 and it'll take possession. What do we do with the UNS foul? This, in turn, becomes a dead ball foul. So we will then add 15 yards from the succeeding spot, and B will have 1st and 10 at the B46. And again, clock will start on the snap. Ryan, thoughts?
No, that's a good one. That's a good one at both levels and a good one for us to think through. And I think thinking of the differences between high school and college kind of segues us nicely into our topic tonight, which will be our annual review of this year's rules changes and points of emphasis for both high school and college football. As usual, we'll start with high school. We've got a few actually pretty important changes this year. Some of these are going to be more important for us to remember than others. Some are more administrative, such as the first one. The first one clarifies and restricts attachments on teeth and mouth protectors. So essentially now items attached to the tooth and to a mouth protector that don't serve a purpose or a function in protecting either the teeth or the mouth won't be allowed. And items that are a part of the protector that are a health or a risk issue to the player and can pose a danger to themselves or other players will not be allowed. So you've seen sort of, I guess, either the pacifier type of mouthpieces or others with some sort of spinning.
Right?
Yeah. So something there. So that's what they're getting rid of there. The second part, or the second new rule, deals with arm sleeve specifications. And these are going to be in regards to guiding manufacturers, players, and coaches. This will become effective in the 2027 season, so not this year. But there's going to be new football arm sleeve performance specifications effective in 2027. This will be pretty similar to the current rules that we have for football gloves, requiring the logo and the specifications for us to approve those. Finally, another one that we probably won't deal with very much, involves electronic equipment. It's approved to permit non-audio and still images to assist with relaying plays from the sideline to players. It allows for the use of some additional equipment, but continues to preclude in-helmet communication. So in college at the FBS and I guess the FCS level this year, you can have coach-to-player communication in the helmets. That's still not permitted in high school. But what is allowed now is for fixed electronic signs with play signals, as well as non-audio methods. Cut. So with this rule change, it allows for fixed electronic signs with play signals, as well as non-audio methods, but still doesn't permit players between the numbers to watch video. And that's just the first few initial ones. We've got a few more to go through, Michael.
Kind of in addition to the electronic equipment, we don't have the ability to have any use of video or audio players, or audio devices for players. That's wearable, I guess we should say. So an Apple Watch or I guess could be AirPods too. So I haven't seen that, but with the use of communication devices coming at the NFL level, now the collegiate level, I think they're just kind of getting out ahead of that. So we're not trying to communicate between coach and players. So that is prohibited. Kind of a new, I guess this would be outside of the administration. This falls in our realm. The forward fumble out of bounds is not going to be returned to the spot of the fumble. And this is going to be Rule 343 and 431 in the exceptions. This is brand new. So a situation potentially giving an unfair advantage to a fumbling team was revised. And when a forward fumble goes out of bounds or is ruled out of bounds between the goal lines, the ball will come back to the spot of the fumble. And so if you're used to work in high school and college, you're kind of similar to that rule. That's kind of aligning together there. And then lastly, we made a clarification. I say we, the Federation made a clarification to Rule 10.4 regarding the 9-6 penalty. So the committee continues to look at revisions and clarifications within the penalty enforcement rules to ensure consistency among illegal participation fouls. If only we wrote the rules, then it'd be fun. And then our biggest thing with points of emphasis this year, again, equipment being worn properly. So we're talking about knee pants length and arm sleeves and tape and earbuds or communication devices, all that stuff. That's a big one. That's always a big one. Sportsmanship is always at the top here when it comes to high school ball as well. And a big emphasis this year on defenseless players and targeting. Again, player safety is always of importance.
Right. Yeah. One thing I haven't seen, I think, like you noted, the one that's going to affect us the most will be forward fumbles out of bounds. Mm-hmm. One thing that I haven't seen is whether that's going to be treated like in high school where the ball's dead because it went out of bounds, or if it's going to be considered not to have gone out of bounds, such that we would wind the clock like we do in college for a forward fumble out of bounds that's brought back to the spot. So I've not seen that yet, so I'll be interested in seeing interpretations that come out on that one. Those are the high school rule changes this year, as well as points of emphasis. Let's get to the college rules changes because there's more there for us to go through. One of the, I guess, emphases that the NCAA has placed the last few years is on feigning injuries and how to try to, quote, clean that up. So this year, there's a rule change that if an injured player goes down after the ball is spotted, so not when the ball's ready for play, after the ball is spotted, an official will declare a timeout and the player must leave the game. Strike. Cut that. Is this...
This is right.
Okay, sorry. I got it slightly ahead of my skis. All right.
Oh, okay.
All right, back in. So if a player is injured, the official, as always, will declare a timeout. Let's just start this over. The first rule change deals with feigning injuries, which has been a point of emphasis the last few years from the NCAA and trying to figure out how to clean up that issue. Mm-hmm. So the rule change, in the event of an injured player, as usual, will declare a timeout and the player has to leave the game. They have to remain out of the game for at least one down, regardless of whether or not that team takes a timeout. When in question, we're still to take a timeout for an injured player. The change now is that if a player is injured or shows himself as being injured after the ball has been spotted, not after the ball's ready for play, after the ball is spotted, that team will be charged a team timeout, or if the team has used all of its timeouts, a delay of game penalty. So that's going to be the big change this year, is that instead of, going down and quote unquote faking or feigning an injury, if that happens late in the process, that team's going to either lose a timeout or have a delay of game penalty enforced against it, which is, both of those are pretty significant, especially in the times of games where these types of things may or may not happen. So,
for sure.
As always, the player can't return to the game. Yeah. As always, we're going to wait for medical personnel to clear the player before we allow them into the game if we're dealing with something like a head injury or some other comparable injury that we might wait for their approval before they come back in. There's also a change in timeouts and extra periods. I think this is sort of the result of the Georgia Tech, what was it, 8 overtimes or however many overtimes last year, where you have one timeout by each team. So you've got like 16 timeouts through overtime in a never ever ending game. So the change this year is that as before, each team is allowed one timeout for the first extra period and one for the second extra period. So it hasn't changed for the first 2 extra periods. Starting with the third extra period, each team is allowed one timeout from that point until the game is over. So if it ends in the third overtime, each team has one timeout. If it goes from third to the 10th overtime, each team only has one timeout throughout that entire process. So it's quite a change for us to deal with in overtimes. As before, timeouts that aren't used in regulation can't be carried over. And an extra period timeout that's not used can't be carried over to other extra periods. Timeouts that are taken by a team between periods of overtime are charged to the succeeding overtime period. Radio and television timeouts are permitted only after the first and second extra periods, and charged team timeouts in overtime may not be extended for radio and television purposes. In the absence of immediate timeout, after the second and fourth extra period, there will still be a 2-minute mandatory break period for us to deal with. There's another pretty big change this year dealing with instant replay. So if you're at a level with instant replay, this is one for the referees to be mindful of. So after the referee and the replay official have conferred and the review process is over, the referee is either going to announce that the on-field ruling is upheld, or that the ruling is strike. Man, I'm struggling. So now you can only have either upheld or it's either upheld or overturned, right? Yeah, that's the
we used to have confirmed stands or
right
overturned.
Okay, now it's just upheld or overturned. Okay, sorry, because it didn't say that. I got confused. I was going. All right, sorry, Jenny. All right, so the change is that after the referee and the replay official have completed the review process, the referee is either going to announce that the on-field ruling is upheld or that it's overturned, and giving a brief description of what was seen on video and how that affects the rules. So instead of having confirmed stands or overturned, now there's only going to be upheld or overturned.
Simplify it. Yep.
Yeah, it simplifies confirmed and stands to the same thing, upheld, with no distinction between confirmed or stands anymore. Now, that won't affect targeting. You still have to confirm all aspects of targeting. So that's going to be one exception to this. But just in terms of announcements, we're going to have either upheld or overturned.
So kind of keeping in the theme with the college changes, we have a slight tweak to our scrimmage kick formation. And so we, in the past, we've had 2 different types of scrimmage kick formations, whether it's the traditional punt or the field goal attempt. So in this case, a scrimmage kick formation is one with no player other than a potential kicker or holder aligned within the frame of the snapper, and no player aligned within that clear path from the snapper to the kicker and or holder. So again, if we're talking the punt formation, I'm using air quotes there, that kicker is 10 yards back. And if we're talking the field goal, quote unquote, we're looking at a kicker and holder who's at least 7 yards back, right? But they don't want anybody blocking that clear lane. So if they're going to have a direct snap, it can't be directly to somebody behind that snapper. You'd have to be at kind of an angle. So, and furthermore, if any team A is in a scrimmage kick formation at that snap, any action by that team during the down is deemed to be from that scrimmage kick formation. So that could come into play with potentially some of our other rules and some of our other enforcements. Then moving on, we have a defensive lineman on scrimmage kick play, so what they can and can't do there. So nothing too crazy. We do this now. If we are in that scrimmage kick formation, the snapper cannot be on the end of his line of scrimmage, and any Team B player within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage may not be aligned within the frame, or I guess they should be completely outside the frame of the body of the snapper when the ball is snapped. So it's something umpires, you can get in there and you can help out and make sure that that's a foul we can avoid.
Yeah, so the change here really is that if you set up in one of those funky formations where the snapper is on the end of the line of scrimmage, you can now have a defender directly over them. They
Oh,
don't have to
let's
be
cut
outside of
that.
the frame.
Let's cut that whole
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
Ooh, gross! Because I just realized what I did. I'm sorry, Jenny. This is bad.
Out of practice.
Oh, we're bad. So bad. So keeping in theme with scrimmage kicks, if team A is in a scrimmage kick formation and the snapper is not on the end of the line of scrimmage, any team B player aligned within 1 yard of that scrimmage kick of that line of scrimmage of that scrimmage kick formation, that's a mouthful, must be aligned outside the frame of the body of the snapper. And so umpires, that's something we can help out with and try to prevent that foul. So again, keeping with our scrimmage kicks, we also have an update to the contact against the snapper. This kind of goes just in conjunction with the last rule. When a team is in a scrimmage kick formation and the snapper is not on the end of the line of scrimmage, there's a theme here with this not on the end of the line of scrimmage. We'll get to it. A defensive player may not initiate contact with the snapper until 1 second has elapsed. So that's kind of something that we've had in the past. Again, we're trying to protect that player.
Yeah, we've always defaulted to protecting the snapper. And so the last two rule changes that you've given is when they set up in that formation where the snapper's on the end and may be eligible, you can now line up a defensive player directly over them, and that they don't have to wait for contact to be initiated for 1 second after the snap, only in that specific formation.
And that's because of I don't remember the game, but when you have that snapper on the end there, the current or the previous rules rather allowed for him to be uncovered, uncontested, kind of an easy play to make, right? So they now allow them to have some sort of coverage there.
Right.
Again, staying with our kick theme, the T signal, the ever popular T signal, is now to be considered an invalid signal. So any invalid signal is any waving that by any player of Team B that doesn't meet the requirements of Article 2, in that case, a valid fair catch signal, right? This now includes the T signal. If that T signal is given, we're shutting it down.
Yeah, and since it's written for free kicks, it's likely going to be changed to include free kicks and scrimmage kicks, although you see the T signal for the most part on free kicks. But this is going to be important for referees and short wings who are back on the goal line to pick up, well, anyone who might pick up a signal.
Sure.
But if you see that T signal, you have the invalid signal, then all of those fair catch and where the ball is going to be snapped from next after that, all of that comes into play. So the T signal we've largely ignored in the past, but now it's lumped in with every other invalid fair catch signal that we might deal with. So that's a lot of changes to kicking plays. So
let's get out of kicks for a while,
Michael. We're going to get back to something that really started last year and that the NCAA started tinkering with as we go. The concept of either defensive movement or disconcerting signals that either a defense or here that we're going to have a change with the offense as well. So as it relates to defensive movement, any player who's within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage, whether they're stationary or not, can no longer make a quick or abrupt or exaggerated action that simulates action at the snap, and that's not part of the normal defensive player movement in an obvious attempt to make the offense foul. And that foul from the offense would be a false start. So when that defensive player comes up and sort of stomping the foot or feigning action in there, that can be a foul now. In terms of words or signals, we've been dealing with this for a few years with the clap from the defense and that type of thing. So you can't have a player that calls defensive signals that simulate the sound or cadence of or otherwise interfere with offensive starting signals. So from the offensive perspective, the offense may either clap as a starting signal or say something like go, something along those lines. So the defense can't clap or use the word go. From the words that the offense can't use, because defenses use the terms move and stem to initiate shifts or movements along the line. Those terms are going to be solely restricted to the defense now. So the offense can no longer use the words move and stem to try to draw the defense off. So I think really this is going to be an umpire, referee, center judge, if you have one, type of thing to hear that, because deeps and line of scrimmage officials probably aren't going to be able to hear what's said right there within the line of scrimmage, or at least not as well.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I hope this brings some clarity to it. I think the bottom line is the rule is trying to allow one side of the ball to do or say certain words or actions to run their offense
Right.
and or defense. That's what they're
Right.
trying to do. So we're not crossing signals or kind of scheming things. But yes, as a short wing, I don't know if I'm comfortable trying to pick up on things everybody says or
Yeah,
does. So we're
it's
looking
tough.
for probably for that forward movement. That's probably about all we can help out with.
Right. And the penalty for any violations, any of these terms or movements, would just be a dead ball foul, delay of game, 5 yards from the succeeding spot. The next rule change, this came out in a bulletin last year, and it's just been placed into the rule book. This is from the Oregon-Ohio State game for substitution fouls that occur after the 2-minute timeout. So Team B, as always, can have, for a brief time, more than 11 players on the field to try to anticipate the offensive formation, but it can't have more than 11 players on the field when the ball is snapped. So it's going to be a live ball foul. If the player is trying to get off the field, it's just going to be an illegal substitution, live ball foul, 5 yards, 5-yard penalty as before. After the 2-minute timeout in either half, if the defense commits a substitution foul and 12 or more players are on the field and participate in a down, then we'll penalize the defense for the foul, and the offense will have the option to reset the game clock back to the time that was displayed at the snap. And if that happens, the game clock will start on the snap on the next play. If the 12th player was trying to get off the field but just doesn't quite make it, then it's just going to be a normal illegal substitution penalty that would be enforced with no clock adjustment. So really, this just takes what happened at the end of that game, where you intentionally have 12 players on the field, and this makes it to where in addition to the 5-yard penalty, the offense has the option to reset the clock to what the time was, and the clock will then start on the snap.
Yeah, for folks that didn't watch that game, essentially, if I recall, Ryan, there was 10, 11, 12 seconds left. So
Something
15.
like that.
And so by having this penalty, right, it effectively burned a play. And the offense in that case was, sure, they were given the 5 yards, but they lost the play.
Right.
And I think they were far enough out of field goal range. They really needed 2 more plays to get moving. So this will be big, I think, for the deep wings to help out with.
Yeah, I mean, it was a play where time was more important to the defense than yardage, so they were happy to give up 5 yards when, under the old rule, it didn't specifically say that you could reset the clock. But now this just codifies, and that came out as a bulletin to us after that game anyway last year. So
That's right, it did.
This just makes it a rule that's in the rule book as we're all reviewing it to go over. So
we highlighted technology a little bit earlier in the collegiate side. Coach-to-player communications through a helmet is now allowed in the FBS and the FCS level. So only one player on the field per team can have that receiving capability, and the player must be identified with a green dot on the back of the helmet. Those have watched either the NFL for over the years or kind of watched that in the FBS world last year. Probably all saw that green dot. It will be shut off when the play clock reaches 15 seconds. That's not something we'll control, obviously. That'll be game administration, but that's something that you may have to deal with at that level, and something to pregame. Or at the snap, obviously, we'd shut that down too. When the play clock is then restored to 25 or 40, communications then kick back on. If more than one green dot is discovered on the field, it's a live ball 5-yard equipment violation, and then the conference would look at it after this. So
one that we're not going to see.
Yeah, I don't intend to see. If I see green dots, it would be shocking. Maybe it's a special night for a helmet or something, I guess.
Right.
On free kick plays, the coach-to-player communications will not be in effect. There's no limitation on the green dots. That's probably just to allow for different defensive players or so, or just to kind of get around that. And then the conferences, of course, can provide a policy to provide guidance on all things when it comes to communications. Other things in the technology world are the tablets we have. So we do have tablets available for in-game review, and tablets are going to be restricted to just the in-game and the current game only, and can't have any sort of data or analytics or any other, I guess, internet access, for lack of a better term, and no other scouting videos. So they can be used in the booth, the sideline, or in the locker rooms. They may not be connected to other devices to project anything larger. So You couldn't have one tablet connected to a big 80-inch screen on the sideline there. So, but they can have sidelines, end zones, any feed from the program, anything regarding that current game, and they can have up to 18 standard tablets. Team personnel engaging with an official to show a tablet, however, that is going to result in an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. So that's something we can't do. If a coach were to bring you a tablet and say, "Hey, look at this," he did this or this happened, that's unfortunately that's going to be 15.
And that one's automatic. It's not discretionary in the rule.
Yeah. And again, a conference can develop a policy to kind of help guide the tablet situation. So I will interject. We had a game last year where both teams were using tablets. I believe the away team's tablets stopped working. So this is just something you all may have to deal with. Is they communicated that to us. That kind of falls outside of our jurisdiction if technology is not working. The coaches, we kind of ran messages between the two of them, and both coaches agreed to just not use tablets. And I think we went first half without tablets, and then during halftime they got fixed, and everybody's using them again. So that's an option if you want to kind of keep the peace between teams. Maybe that's a gentleman's agreement that everyone can come to, but there's nothing really, if a tablet or whatever is down, that there's nothing we can do to fix it.
Right.
So. Lastly, eye shields, everybody's favorite. So normally we are seeing more and more of the reflective, the tinted, the dark, the mask, the smoky, all that stuff. Again, by rule, they have to be clear and not tinted and made from a single piece of rigid material. And if we've got any sort of eyeglasses or goggles that are used, same thing. They have to be clear with no tint, and no medical exceptions are allowed. So if I know we've seen it all the time, Ryan, everybody shows up with the whatever, blue, green, purple visor, and they warm up in it, and they promise to take it off before the game. So make sure that they do. But of note, manufacturers can submit a nearly clear eye shield without any sort of mirroring finish or any sort of reflective finish for the NCAA Rules Committee to review for the upcoming year. So I would like to see what nearly clear is going to look like. That would be interesting.
I had this last year where we had a player where, depending on where the sun was and from the side, there was sort of a prism effect on it. But when you looked from the front, just, the whole idea is to see the eyes and make sure it's clear. It was just perfectly clear when we were looking at it dead on. And it was the weirdest thing. But,
wow.
I had that team a couple times and we saw it, and I had an opposing coach complain, but it was one where when you stand in front, it was perfectly legal. So,
that's wild.
So I think that's sort of what's being contemplated here, but we'll see. I mean, normally eye shields to me are always one that the illegal ones kind of jump out at you anyway. So I don't expect that's really going to change at this point, but we'll see. So those are the college rule changes. There's a few editorial changes for us to go through as well. The first one is really, really outside of our realm. Involves advertising on the field. Obviously, we're never going to cancel a game because there's extra logos on the field or because we've counted more than there are. So I'm going to skip over that one only because that is not something that officials are going to be involved with.
If somebody, that's one if somebody complains, let's take that up with game administration and perhaps reach out to your commissioner of your conference. Say, hey, just going to make you wear this. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the idea that by rule, the 50-yard line has to be outlined on the logo that's in the middle of the field.
Sure.
But you go all the time and schools don't have it. Do
yeah.
we stop the game? Of course not.
Absolutely not.
So again, sort of outside of our jurisdiction. If the field is safe to play on, free of obstructions and that kind of thing, which a logo is not an obstruction, play ball.
We have coined this show "Learn Your Stripes," and we want everyone to learn the rules. We also have another phrase, and that's called "Don't be a pioneer."
Right.
And if that's one that "Don't be a pioneer." So, but back to editorial changes. Back to the feigning injuries. So this is just kind of the highlighting that change we talked about earlier. An injured player must be given full protection under the rules, but again, feigning injuries is not part of our game and what we're trying to avoid. If there's anything questionable, the institution, the school, the conference has an option to consult with the national coordinator of officials, who would then facilitate a review. And after that review, the coordinator will communicate anything that they find, and then as directed by the football code. So that again takes that out of our hands. So above all, if you suspect a player is injured, they get up, they're woozy, shut the play down. And again, the timeout and delay of game is only after the ball has been spotted. So we don't have to change anything about our mechanics. If the play ends and honestly a player is hurt, they're fine. They go out. Well, they're not fine, excuse me. But everything is our normal flow. They go out for a play, seek medical attention if needed, and then we can play ball, no timeout or no delay game.
Right.
Another change, Rule 413B. This is our exception. When any part of the ball carrier's body except the hand or foot touches the ground, or when the ball carrier is tackled or otherwise falls and loses possession of the ball as they contact the ground with any part of their body except the hand or the foot. The exception is the ball remains alive when an offensive player has simulated a kick or at the snap is in position to, cut. Our exception being the ball will remain live when an offensive player has simulated a kick or at the snap is in position to kick the ball held for a place kick by a teammate. That ball may be kicked, passed, handed, or advanced. And then lastly, our momentum rule has had a small tweak to it as well. And that's Rule 851A. And in A, I'll just highlight it real quick. The momentum is in play when we have an interception of a pass, a fumble, or recover an opponent's fumble, a backwards pass, or a catch or recovery of an opponent's kick. And it's the opponent's piece. I believe, Ryan, the rule left out the word opponents, I think. Am I right on that?
Yeah, so now it just puts opponents in when it's defining a fumble or a backward pass or an opponent's kick.
It'd be interesting momentum on your own team's kick.
Yeah, I suppose you could have one of those funky punts, but...
Mark the tape. One of us is going to have it this year now. We've spoken into existence.
Except in that scenario, the kicking team would probably prefer safety instead of giving up the ball at the 4 or 5 or 3 or whatever.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's not part of the rule book or the editorial change.
That's a whole different. But that's the big piece there. Otherwise, the momentum rule remains the same. So I'll let Ryan finish off we got a few more Ryan can finish off.
Yeah, so just a couple more for us to finish. Obviously we've had, I don't know how many years now, the blocking below the waist rule has been tweaked. This editorial change just really gives us, the limitations on Team A prior to a change of team possession. Linemen with initial position completely inside the tackle box can legally block below the waist inside the tackle box on the initial line charge. A block initiated 1 yard beyond is going to be considered within the tackle box. After that initial line charge, those linemen can block below the waist within the tackle box until it leaves the tackle box, only if the force is directed from the front. As before, stationary backs who are lined up with any part of their body inside the tackle box may block below the waist within the tackle box until the ball leaves the tackle box, only if the initial contact is directed from the front. Again, a block initiated 1 yard beyond the neutral zone is considered within the tackle box. And we've known what directed from the front is for the last few years. That's that between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock if we were thinking about a clock that we're looking at. All other team players, as before, are not allowed to block below the waist. There's a small tweak as well in terms of roughing the passer. As before, no defensive player shall unnecessarily rough a passer when it's obvious the ball has been thrown. As before, targeting is illegal for a player in a passing posture. Forcible contact to the head or neck area that doesn't meet the requirements set forth in Rule 914 is still illegal. Forcible contact that's avoidable after it's obvious the ball has left the passer's hand, still going to be illegal. Forcibly driving the passer to the ground, or any other action that's personal foul is described elsewhere in the section. So really the change here is that it really defines that it still can be roughing the passer after the ball has left the passer's hand. Finally.
Cut.
Oh.
I want to interject with an announcement, if I may. Like this, we're still under our cut thing here. Can I make your announcement? Is that okay?
Sure.
I would very much like to do that for you. I know we skipped at the beginning, and this roughing the passer just made me think of it.
Well, I don't. Do you want to? Oh,
Do you want to save it at the end?
yeah, maybe do it at the end just so that it's less editing that she has to do.
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise she would have to cut out and splice it back. So.
Oh, no, I was just going to do it right here in the body. But yeah, let's do it at the end. Okay, let's do it.
Okay, sorry.
All right, so Jenny, I'm sorry. I was just proud of my friend. But yeah, all right, roll back in, buddy.
Another change, physical interference with an official. That's a team unsportsmanlike conduct foul unless we can identify the individual who's responsible. I can say I don't know that I've ever been able to, when I've run into a player or a coach on the sideline, been able to identify them afterwards.
No.
I did have that come up last year, and while I couldn't identify the player, the assistant coaches very quickly identified him for me. So
that's usually the case.
So we knew exactly who it was, but it wasn't because I had that knowledge on my own. And finally, one tweak in Rule 10.22b, we know that there are certain fouls that when the offensive team commits them behind the neutral zone, there are fouls that we would enforce from the previous spot. And that's illegal use of hands, holding, illegal blocks, personal fouls, and unsportsmanlike conduct. Still going to be an exception if Team A commits a foul. Still going to have an exception if a foul occurs in Team A's end zone and the penalty's a safety. But Rule 6.3.13 gives us some guidance there for offensive team fouls during scrimmage kick plays.
I think it's the unsportsmanlike conduct part, right? That's the piece that was added?
Right. Yeah, we've always had a list there, but this just sort of really codifies, illegal blocks such, holding, blocking the backs, those kind of things are always there. And this gives us personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct as well.
Yep.
So those are your 2025. And for those of you at levels above me, perhaps 2026, 2025 going into 2026 rule changes for high school and college football. And we thank you for joining us once again for another episode of Learn Your Stripes. As always, we're going to leave you with a play to consider.
But before we do, we have an announcement. And one of the hosts on this show has now become a referee. And that is my good friend Ryan, has now become a referee in the Heartland Conference. And I think this is something he's worked incredibly hard for and put a lot of effort into. Not only with this show, with the rules, I've seen him on calls, and he has demonstrated his ability to take his game to the next level. So I congratulate you, Ryan, on your position, and I'm looking forward to what the year brings you. So congratulations.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that very much. I'm excited for the season and what's to come here, and the opportunity to lead a crew is going to be very exciting. When we started this show, you were a deep wing and I was a line of scrimmage. Now we're no longer doing the things that we did way back in the early days of Learn Your Stripes. So,
that's fantastic.
But it does let us bring more experience and more knowledge of various positions to the show. The only things that we can't speak about is umpire. So
yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Umpire and back judge, really, but. As a deep wing, you can kind of discuss back judge. We're both kind of lost on umpire.
Right. Awesome. Congrats again, buddy.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it.
All right. We will leave you the play. 1st and 10 at the A20. A99 catches a forward pass at the A50, runs to the B28 where he fumbles. B97 picks up the ball, runs to the B49 where he fumbles. A86 jumps on a loose ball at the B50. The referee has a flag down for roughing the passer. And as always, what is your ruling in high school and college?
And add in clock status as well while you're doing this, because this is an interesting play. So that's a really good play, Michael, and that brings in a lot of concepts. So looking forward to that one. As always, we'll discuss that play at the start of our next episode. In the meantime, if you want to let us know what your ruling would be, or if you have any questions or feel we made a mistake, please email us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com. You can also contact us there if you're interested in sponsoring an episode or advertising on the show. You can find us on your app of choice or obtain episodes at learnyourstripespodcast.com. Please also follow us on Facebook at Learn Your Stripes Podcast, on Instagram at the same name, and on X at LYS_podcast. If you enjoy the show, please tell your friends and rate us 5 stars and leave a review on your app of choice. We'll see you back here soon. In the meantime, keep learning your stripes.
Thank you, everyone.